In this video, I'm studying a Bible passage and meditating creatively on what it means to walk with God. This is how I'm using art to reinforce spiritual concepts to renew my mind. And the Bible verse I'm looking at is Genesis 5:24, where it says, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. I started imagining what it means to walk with God. And so I started looking at other passages in the Bible that talks about walking with God. And I came across this verse in 2 Corinthians 5:7, which says, "We walk by faith and not by sight." This idea just stirred up my imagination, and I got out my sketchbook. When I study the Bible creatively, I always involve my senses, my sense of sight, sound, touch, and writing out things and doodling. And so I start with the word walk, just writing it in the middle of my page. And around this word, I'm starting to doodle an image that comes to my mind. I thought about a girl in a flowy dress taking a walk. And I just start sketching. And while I'm sketching, I'm thinking about, what does this mean to walk with God? It's about devoting your mind to Him, your actions, moving towards a destination. And when I meditate on the words of the Bible, I'm just repeating it in my mind and turning over the concept. And the word for meditation in Hebrew has very interesting meanings, and it's the same word that is used for moan or growl or utter, to muse, devise, plot, roar, or imagine. These are very interesting words. When someone is in an intense physical activity, they start to moan or groan, like when you're playing a physical game, and it gives this idea of intensity. It gives this idea of engaging your whole body, soul, and mind and strength. Meditating on the Word of God involves intensity. It involves something that goes very, very deep, and it enables the Word to sink deep into our hearts. And for me, creativity is what does it. And here I'm thinking about the picture of walking with God and the things that hinder us from walking with God, because sin hinders us from walking with God. It takes us on a different path altogether. And so I'm thinking about the images of sin, like walls which put up a barrier between us and God, about barbed wire, darkness, fog. And I'm also thinking of what it means to walk by faith. And I just thought about faith being the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's why I drew the image of a bird bringing a letter. Walking by faith and not by sight, our spiritual eyes are open to the things of God, while our physical eyes are not what dictates what we focus on. So I'm getting out my art journal, which I made the other day. It's a journal in which I'm going to record the things that the Lord is showing to me through His Word. The page I opened, there's already color on it. It gives me a head start because it's not entirely a blank page. On this paper, I'm just writing out the verse, "We walk by faith, not by sight." Throughout my time as I'm creating the artwork, or as I'm gathering my materials or paints, I am saying it over and over. We walk by faith and not by sight. This is another aspect of meditating on the Bible, is repeating the Word of God out loud over and over again. It's like churning over something, digesting something, chewing on something, because you're doing it repeatedly. It's a physical action, and the act of saying the Word of God cements it in your mind and allows your heart and mind to grasp it. As you are seeing me do, what I have done is just extend the colors on one page to the other page. I have pages which are colored, interspersed with white pages throughout this journal. This is a great way to break that block of a blank page. So if you're creating a journal, I encourage you to include pages with patterns and colors on it in some places, or even stick down pieces of paper randomly, because that can spark some imagination. It can spark some ideas. And the way I came up with this image is just by starting to extend the colors that was already on that one page into the next page. And then I just started from there. I've heard lots of messages about Enoch, and the New Testament also talks about Enoch as a man of God in the book of Hebrews, where it lists all the heroes of the faith. Enoch is one of them, the second one after Abel. And you will notice that Adam is not on this list. He was the first man actually who walked with God. If you remember in the book of Genesis, it says God walked in the cool of the garden. In the cool of the evening, he walked in the garden. And God actually came looking for Adam and Eve on the day that they had sinned. And if it says God was walking in the cool of the evening, I imagine that's something he did every day, even before Adam and Eve sinned. And I imagine also that Adam and Eve did walk with God on those days when life was peaceful before they had sinned. But as I said earlier, sin creates a barrier. It creates a wall between us and God. And the presence of sin made Adam and Eve hide from God. It hindered them from walking with God. It kept them from the fellowship that they could have enjoyed every day. And what happened after that was so tragic that they were driven away from the presence of God. And we never hear about Adam repenting. And all we know about Adam is that he was responsible for plunging the human race into sin. And this is something that is very sad but often happen, is that even though someone is walking with God, if they turn away, that is what people remember. People remember the negative. People remember the mistakes, the failures, more than the daily walk, more than the times when someone is faithful to God. And it's very sad. People around you notice when you make a mistake. They may not necessarily notice when you're walking faithfully with God and you're doing what is right, but or on the day you make a mistake, that's the day people remember about you. And it's very sad, but that's the fact. Adam isn't remembered for having walked with God. He's remembered for bringing sin into the world. But then the grace of God is so amazing and it's so beautiful because when we think about Jesus bringing forgiveness to the thief that was dying on the cross, even if we have failed all our lives, even if we have blundered and hurt people or hurt ourselves and experienced tragedy or failure or the effects of sin, whether it is effects of sin of other people upon us, whether it is facing abuse or facing somebody else's evil, God is able to redeem it even at the end of our lives. God is able to bring forgiveness, and He is able to impart His forgiveness to us to such an extent that we are also able to forgive. And that's the grace of God. It's so beautiful that God enables us to live in a way that so we can experience His mercy and we can experience what it is to live in His presence and walk in His presence. We don't have to walk away from Him. We have the choice to walk away. And that is another aspect of God's love, that He loves us so much. He gives us so much freedom. He gives us so much grace that we are free to walk away. Anyone is free to walk away from God, and that happens. Walking with God means choosing His ways, His righteousness, choosing the way of peace, the way of obedience, the way of commitment and devotion to the true and living God. In the face of all the distraction and all the things that pull you away from God, we are able to choose the path that God has, and we are able to choose to walk with God. And I just put that girl there as if she's walking on the path that leads to God, and she is focused on the end goal. She's walking by faith and not by sight. No amount of earthly success matters unless we walk with God. And I just want to be faithful with what God has given me. And honestly, in the eyes of the world, I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I don't have anything in my name. I never had a career. I've been a wife and mother for 24 years now. But I'm just doing what I love, and I'm just trying to be faithful with what I have. Don't let anyone deceive you into thinking you are not enough or that you're not doing enough. Because God sees you. If you are walking with God, you know and God knows. And that is what matters. God is everything. And I just want to encourage you today to just cling to Him. Walk in His ways. Be someone who walks by faith and not by sight. Don't be discouraged about the things that are around you, which may be disappointing, or the things that you see in your past, or the things that you see in other people, and compare it to yourself. No, don't let those things discourage you. Set your sights on Jesus. Set your sights on things above. Just like this girl, I just made her eyes focused on one point, and I just want to emphasize that point, that her sight is fixed on God. I love seeing the process of a blank page turning into something interesting, and I hope that you enjoyed this process as well. And let me know in the comments if you learned something new today. And also, I want to remind you to join my newsletter, which I will share in the description box, and we can stay connected that way. May the Lord bless you with great ideas and times of creativity in His presence.